Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, this is Thomas Hubert, news correspondent with the Farmers Journal, and we have our whole beef team, nearly all the beef team around the table for this podcast. We have our markets specialist, Phelim O'Neill, livestock specialist, Darren Carty, a livestock specialist as well, Kieran Lenehan, and a pedigree specialist, Shane Murphy. And we're going to have a look at prices along the beef chain at the moment, and maybe I'll start with you, Darren, on where we are in terms of cold hard cash. If you're bringing cattle to the factory at the moment, what are the numbers?
Yeah, I suppose it's been very, very negative for the last 5, 6, 7 weeks, and that there's been downward pressure and prices falling probably week on week on the back of, say, weekly kills somewhere between 35 and 36,000. We hit a peak the week previous, 36,200 cattle. And it's becoming, or there's signs, thankfully, of the trade maybe bottoming out. That last week's kill fell just shy of 1,900 head to 34,293. It's still a high kill. There's still a lot of cattle in the system, but I suppose it's the first sign of a reduction, and it's the first sign that cattle supplies, I won't say are tightening, but they're starting to fall off. And what farmers or producers will be hoping is that this will continue over the next few weeks as, say, farmers start to house cattle, but also as the natural decline in cattle at this time of the year coming off grass-based systems come. It hasn't translated into any change in price just yet, but what we have seen is that base prices this week have steadied. 360 a kilo for steers to 365 and heifers 370 to 375, and there is some signs in the heifer trade that there is a small bit more life, with some sellers trading at the higher end of the market holding out for 380 a kilo.
Phelim, how are markets playing with the throughput at the moment? Where is this cattle going, and is there any risk there for the future next few weeks?
Well, at the moment we've just had Halloween this week, but believe it or not, in the meat processing industry it's now Christmas. That's very much the seasonal demand, and factories are starting to put down their Christmas orders at this stage from now on over the next few weeks. From a market perspective, it's very clear that it's the numbers of cattle that are in the system that have the depressing effect on prices recently, because markets are actually quite good out there for all parts of the carcass. And of course we have to remember that selling beef is totally different from selling cattle. You have that carcass is broken down into a multitude of component parts. And thankfully, and one of the parts that's often very sticky is the hindquarter roasting cuts. Thankfully, as you go into this time of year, that's a cut that gets into demand in the run up to Christmas. So that is, there's markets for those. The steak meat isn't too bad. It normally comes under pressure this time of year, but there are reasonably good continental markets there, both for that and the ribs. And manufacturing beef, particularly the higher lean manufacturing beef, is going particularly well at the moment as well. Not just in Ireland, the UK, but across the continent and the wider world. Like, for example, Canada has been in the news recently with the signing of the free trade agreement at the weekend. That's a market that Irish traders are actually looking very, very closely at, and will be looking to buy as soon as the treaty takes effect early in the new year. So from a market perspective, things are actually quite positive right now. Factories can sell beef. What has been probably holding it back here is the fact that there's been a good supply of cattle and they've been able to get them quite handily. It hasn't been that way in Britain or indeed in the north.
Phelim was mentioning Britain there, of course, a major market for us. Darren, are we seeing any effect of this famous Brexit and sterling exchange effect?
Yeah, Irish farmers have definitely taken the brunt of it, and say Irish beef farmers first of all. In recent weeks, Irish sheep farmers have also been affected, but at this time of the year, if we look, generally northern farmers are very, very active, both, I suppose, in buying cattle in, say, marked rings around that sort of border Midlands region, Donegal, Mayo, Leitrim, and they have been absent from the trade for the last while, and that has really, I suppose, maybe taken a toll or added to the difficulties that, say, beef prices here, as we said earlier, have been in a lot of, say, downward pressure in recent weeks. But that has translated into store prices, and definitely one of the things that is definitely missing is these northern finishers. if we look back maybe to this time last year, if we look at where sterling was, we're in a totally different situation where sterling was probably in the low 70s. It's now at 89 to 90 pence in recent weeks, and that has stepped up at different stages right along the line, going on different, say, Brexit changes in, say, Theresa May's announcement, and what the plan was going to be was the latest one that really spiraled, I suppose, maybe the value of sterling into a lot more weaker place. How that's affecting maybe the dead trade, or how it's affecting, say, prices, is that it's a good thing for northern farmers, as I'll explain in a minute, but it's a bad thing for southern farmers in that it's taken a source of competition. If we look at the number of cattle travelling north for direct slaughter right throughout 2015, we're probably somewhere at an average of 650 to 700 cattle a week. If we go to, say, what has travelled north for direct slaughter in recent weeks, just 3 weeks ago there was only 14 cattle went up. The previous week there was 18. Last week it did improve and there was over 100. But if we go back to this time last year, that would have normally been 700, 750, 800. So that's taken out a big source of competition. Why it's benefiting northern farmers, I suppose, is that there's more demand in say, the north for cattle, and we've seen prices, while our prices have been under pressure, theirs have been increasing week on week. And even this week we see David Wright and Kieran Maley that some of the prices they have on the northern pages are, say, base prices haven't really changed much. They're 336 to 340, or where that'll be is 390 to 394 for U grade animal. But northern farmers are getting anywhere up to 350 a kilo, which we'd love to be getting. It's the equivalent of €4 to 408 for a U sort of -3 animal. So it puts it in perspective of our prices falling, their prices increasing. In the same way in Britain, there's been a gradual increase in price right since last May, but probably Phelan's probably better maybe placed to say where that has come from, and this whole maybe focus since Brexit on buying British.
Phelim, Darren there describing increased demand in the UK. Is there maybe a more nationalistic approach to the market at the moment in the wake of Brexit?
There's a couple of drivers that has been pushing the UK, the retail market in particular, the supermarket trade. There's been a series of very aggressive price promotions ran over the late summer and autumn months in the UK. Now, British supermarkets, 7 out of the top 10 British retailers sell exclusively UK Red Tractor branded beef. That's part of, Darren there referred to the price increases in the north. That's part of what's driving that trade. There is a ferocious factory demand for Red Tractor beef. And with that demand, the price promotions, you actually, if you looked at the retail price index from May through to September, that has actually come back by about 40 pence sterling per kilo on average retail price at a time when farm gate prices were increasing. So that is a truly unique event that has happened there, driven by the aggressive competition. It's the Tesco, Sainsbury, Asda trying to counteract. Lidl and Aldi have been taking increased market share in Britain, just the same as they've been doing in Ireland, and that is the attempt to counteract that over the summer, and it has worked. They've driven sales, they've driven volume. That has left in turn factories chasing cattle and paying more to get them. There's only about of the Irish beef that goes to supermarkets, only about 17 to 20% makes it into the 3 supermarkets out of the 10 that do take Irish beef. So we haven't got the pickup south of the border in that our Northern Ireland farmers have, and that very much is what's driven the price in Britain, both Britain and Northern Ireland.
Now I'm turning to Kieran Lenihan. Kieran, you've been to Greenorport recently, and maybe there's a bit of good news there. What's happening on the live exports front outside Northern Ireland, which we've just heard is not happening? What else is happening?
Yeah, Thomas, I suppose the story at the moment is quite bleak for the beef industry. Our one chink of light is that we finally have decent volumes of cattle leaving the country. So the exporter currently at the moment is he's Viastar. It's James Mallon, is the chief executive. He's based in County Meath, and his plan is to get 20,000 cattle out of the country to Turkey even by the end of 16. 20,000 cattle at the moment, a week's kill is about 36,000. So while it's not huge, every little helps in a sense. So yeah, we were down there last week. The Atlantic M was just about to take its second load off. They were kind of a lighter type of animal, suckler bred and R grade between 300 and 400 kilos. The Atlantic M is currently off the coast of Algeria. The last time I checked, due to dock the 5th, I think it was, of November in Mersin port in Turkey. And on Saturday, a second boat left from Greenore Port. This one is the Brahman Express, so it's a bigger, faster boat. Where the Atlantic M was taking just shy of 3,000, the Brahman Express can take over 4,000. So that left on Saturday. As I said, we've yet to get an exact number, but I was told around 4,000 it could take. So that's currently just about to head round the Rock of Gibraltar and head into the Mediterranean. So look, every little helps. In terms of the type of animal, I suppose plainer cattle than we traditionally be exporting to Europe in big volumes. R graders, even talk of some dairy cross beef stock this week. But look, the most common type of animal we slaughter in Ireland is an R grader. So whereas lads might be looking to export E and U grade type cattle, the reality is that if we export cattle and get rid of cattle that are common, we're creating more competition within our own shores for beef.
Now, you were also writing a lot in the Farmers Journal these past few weeks about winter housing, winter feeding. Say I have cattle going in the next few weeks. Any tips and advice on how to adapt to the conditions we're talking about at the moment?
Well, Thomas, the first thing I'd tell you would be to carry out a budget. If you're going to try and finish these cattle for the winter, you absolutely need to carry out a feeding budget. A couple of weeks ago, we would have had a great template for it, and it can be downloaded online, actually. So one of our better farmers, Billy Glasheen, he's a store-to-beef producer, and myself and Billy sat down and carried out a complete in-depth budget for him this winter. So we looked at what Billy could pay based on the costs he'll incur, and crucially, the predicted slaughter prices in the spring. So I suppose any listener can go on and if they type search Glasheen on the website, they'll pull up the article and you can actually download an Excel spreadsheet and work and plug in your own cost there. I could probably predict now that it's not going to be a big money making exercise finishing or winter finishing. Most people, when they do the budget, will see this, and I suppose the advice, or what many lads will do, is store these animals. So that's kind of tip them over for the winter, not push them on too hard and get them to grass. Look, grass is the cornerstone of Irish livestock production. It's what sets us apart and what makes most people competitive. So I suppose if you're storing cattle, you're looking to shorten your winter, and how you do that, I suppose, is make sure you have a grass supply in the spring. So at the moment, grazing conditions are ideal, and we have an extended grazing season after what was a difficult one for some. So I suppose we were at a few Teagasc grass walks last week, and they told us that every extra day we get at grass in the autumn time or the winter at the moment is worth 180 per head. So it's a saving of 180 per head relative to cost of housing those animals. The same in the spring, the saving jumps to 270 per head. So every extra day in the spring is worth 270 per head. So basically what this tells us is that we need to shorten our winter as much as possible. Now the temptation for a lot of people will be to, I suppose, eat the farm right to the butt now, get cattle in as kind of a reactionary measure, maybe in 3-4 weeks' time. These people will be looking across feed barriers at empty fields in the spring with cattle ready to go. So if we look at our Grass Plus page this week, we have guidelines for what your farm cover should be in order to have a good cover of grass in the springtime. So at the moment, I think it's about 18 days worth of grass that we need on farms, and that's gonna come down gradually as the season progresses. So about 60% of a farm should be closed up for the spring at the moment. But as I said, refer to Grass Plus pages this week and in the next few weeks to see where you need to be. So we absolutely need to shrink our winter feeding costs, and grass is our biggest weapon to do this.
Okay, thanks, Kieran. Now, there's one more link in the beef chain, and that's the pedigree side of things. Shane Murphy is here with us. Shane, how are the bull sales doing, and the whole pedigree sector? Is it affected by the pressure on beef prices and store prices at the moment?
It certainly is. I suppose we're watching the price drop there every week for the price of beef. On top of that, then Darren touched off, the price of sterling is a massive influence on the sales. We covered a nice bit of the bull sales over in Sterling and Carrail 2 weeks ago. Good indicators usually for autumn sales coming over here a small bit later, and their prices were down as well. So they were looking at 600 down to 1400 down per average for Smith and Charlie's. Slight increase in Angus, a lot driven by the schemes over there. But again, coming back over to our sales in, we're just after a big weekend of it here with the Pedigree Belgian Blue sale and Pedigree Limousine sale and Ross Crate. The outlook was a lot better than people were expecting. There was a lot of doubt going into the Limousine Premier with the price of sterling so low. The export market there last year was a big market, and not only was it numbers wise, it was the prices they were paying. They were the top end they were paying, and they were afraid of the price of sterling they wouldn't come back over. As Darren touched off, like you're talking about low 70s last year to nearly 90p p to euro this year. It's a massive difference for the lads coming over, but it didn't follow through. There was a lot of exporters over. We've seen 18 bulls exported altogether. Now 3 of them were to Spain, but it was 15 went to Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, which is very positive for the sales going forward. Similar stories, the blue had a desperate sale, I have to say. Averages down with 1,700, but again, it was the top prices that were going across the water, so the UK purchases were there. Now going into the week ahead, we've got our Cemental Premier. Again, like last year, looking back at it, we had 30 exported over 130 sales. And again, they were all UK, sort of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So again, unless them buyers are there, it's a big chunk to fulfil from the Irish purchasers. So again, I suppose we can look into it with a bit of light coming from Ross Cray that the buyers did still come across the water and still did come across the border. But unless the sales are going to have them there, it's going to be a tough autumn ahead.
Okay, Shane Murphy, thank you very much. We've loads of reports from the sales you've just mentioned and more coming up at the weekend online at farmersjournal.ie. Thank you.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Untitled, the home of Irish dairy.
Brexit was mentioned in relation to beef prices just there, and it was the topic of a cross-border forum organised by the Irish government in Dublin this Wednesday. There, Phelim O'Neill met Conal Donnelly, Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Meat Exporters Association.
We're looking at here a short sort of medium-term benefit of the weak sterling, which has obviously benefited exporters, benefited farmers in terms of prices, and looking further ahead, really we don't know because it's too early to tell, and a lot's going to ride on how the negotiations play out. We would probably see 3 broad concerns. One around the future of farm support. There's a challenge there to try and secure the same, or in fact maybe a better level of support if possible than what farmers currently receive, to put them on a kind of a level playing field with competitors around Europe. There's an issue around availability of labour to process that raw material, and obviously then availability of markets in which to sell the finished product, and where we will be able to sell those products will ultimately be determined by the outcome of the negotiations, and those are going to be undertaken over a fairly long and protracted period of time.
Well, of those issues that you raised there, I suppose 2 of the 3, the issue of farm support is something that will be resolved, probably involving the UK farming unions and the government. That's a blank page, and that will develop over time. The third issue about access to market, surely from a processing industry point of view, with UK and deficit meat production, that bit takes care of itself. The one that is of interest, actually, and it's been highlighted recently, I know, by the HDB, the levy body in England, in a presentation to the National Farmers Union in Scotland, labour to process meat and general for service the food industry is a concern looking ahead.
Well, it obviously is, and I suppose the concern emanates from the fact that the exchange rate has made it probably less attractive, probably the short term, possibly longer, for migrant workers, foreign nationals, to work in the UK economy. And it was exacerbated by the fact that they won't be sure of their long-term status until we really come to an agreement in terms of our relationship with Europe. So yes, there's a level of dependency on migrant labour in terms of particularly at operative level around plants throughout not just food processing, but in many industries around the UK. Transport, hospitality, retail, all quite dependent on the availability of migrant workers to a certain extent, and we have we do need some clarity or certainty on that going forward, and potentially something that will become an issue sooner rather than later.
So in terms of a Brexit negotiation, when the EU and the UK get into serious discussion, you will be looking for, I suppose, the UK government to step up with a farm support mechanism. You'll be looking to preserve access to external markets where possible, but interestingly you will be looking access to migrant labour for the foreseeable future.
Well, we need to see a system one way or another where we have access to labour, whether that's local labour or migrant labour, and Much of that, will depend on, I suppose, the availability of foreign nationals in terms of coming into the local economy, but also some of that's built around welfare arrangements and the like, and the incentives for people to work. So it's not simply about the availability of foreign workers, also about the availability and the incentives for local people to take up what are often quite attractive jobs in the processing sector.
Conal Donnelly, thank you very much.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Untitled, the home of Irish dairy.
Last weekend, Macra na Firma held its annual rally in Limerick. There, my colleague Odile Evans asked a number of young farmers what the future holds for them.
Eamon Castles, 31, at Boy County Meath, farming suckler cows to beef. Currently farming 104 acres with 23 suckler cows with all stock brought to finish. So my future, I definitely have a lot of scope for expansion within the farm at the moment. So the intention is that I'm only a few years in it and to bring my stock numbers up. Farming part-time, I'd say my future is to remain farming part-time, try and make my farm as labour efficient as possible to facilitate that, as well as being financially efficient, that even though it is a part-time, you can't afford it to be a hobby. It needs to turn over and make a profit, and fully intend to farm it in that manner.
My name is Stephen Long from Killinteer and Macra in Kerry. I'm working full-time, I'm a part-time beef farmer, carrying maybe around 12 suckler cows and rearing some calves, weanings as well then, mainly dairy crosses. I think there's a bright future both for suckling and for the calf to weaning system. I think the key thing is to have the correct breed of cow and the correct mate with the correct sire and produce what the market is looking for. Also for the calf to weaning system, I think there's a good future and good margins to be made from that as well. One of the things that's limiting, I suppose, people in my own age group, I think, is just availability of land through leasing or rental. That's the one thing that's holding me back at the moment. The future ahead, I would like to take on more land and increase both the suckler herd and the calf system, but it'll all purely depend on availability of land, I think.
I'm Alan O'Connor. I'm from Killinteer and Macra in County Kerry, part-time farmer at home with my father. Dairy herd, spring calving, grass-based, milking about 60 cows on a 70-acre platform. Like at the moment, I wouldn't be full-time farmer. I'm teaching as well, so I'd like to continue on the farming in the family and just to maintain what's been there. Maybe downsize a little bit from what is there. I think expansion isn't possible, and I don't think the land around our area wouldn't be the best either. So I think it's just trying to maintain what's there and hopefully trying to improve solids as well and improve yield, and hopefully the price of milk will stabilise. I know it's been a bit volatile the last couple of years, so if it does stabilise, go back over 30 cents a litre, I think there'd be more of an incentive to stay in dairy farming.
And just on that, is it a case of the milk price stabilising or us learning how to manage the volatility?
I suppose it's probably a case of both, because you have to manage it as well, don't you? If it is volatile, it's a case of keeping costs down as well. Like even look at seeing the anaerobic digesters today, what they're doing. They said the farmer has reduced his manure output or his fertiliser output by half since the anaerobic digesters have come in. So it's a case of constantly reviewing every year. Like we've even looking at in terms of herd health now, we've that's one of our main issues for the coming year now. We've identified a new bolus that we're going to give to the cows before 8 weeks before they calve down. So hopefully that will improve the herd as well. So again, as you said, it's constantly trying to keep costs down, and then because you can't control the market ourselves, so it's just a case of reacting then and just hoping for the best, really.
My name is Conor O'Leary and I'm a dairy farmer from Blarney, County Cork. The long-term ambition is to milk a lot of crossbred cows, producing milk off grass at a low cost and hopefully making a ball of money.
Hi, I'm Paddy Mead from Divisvit, Macra, dairy farmers at home with my father. We've a spring calving herd, and we've a grass-based system at the moment, British Frisian herd, pedigree British Frisian herd, and I'd like to stay with that. Try and increase solids. It's kind of what we're being paid on at the moment, and keep inputs to a minimum, I suppose, with feed, meal and that. I'd probably move it in maybe to a farm partnership between both of us. Is what we're probably looking at in the future, and eventually take over full management of it myself. Probably increase the herd size slightly, but stick to within one labour unit managing the system.
Michael Comerford from Kilkenny, suckler farm background.
So, what's your future in farming?
Well, supposedly hoping to build up the suckler herd at home to about 50 or 60 cows. Give me a bit of an asset to sell to get into a dairy partnership, or else a long-term lease on some farm. Say I'd be going for a low-cost system with either Norwegian red crossbreds or Jersey crossbreds. I'd be hoping to outwinter them on beat for the winter, just for keep costs down. Sure, the cows don't really need a shed, just more for demanding the animals, so try and manage that as best we can. The main thing is to keep the costs down.
Okay. And what's, like, in 10 years' time, what do you see yourself, like, as the price of milk? What's going to be the...
Well, sure, it'll have to come around again, like, but sure, the way it is at the moment, the dairy farmers brought it on themselves. But I'd say there's a lot of them out there still making money, it's just they're not making as much as they're used to making, and that's an eye on them at the moment. And like, no matter how bad the price of milk is, it's still not as bad as a year for a suckler farmer.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Tourroir, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Last Friday saw the commemoration of the 1966 March for Farmers' Rights in Bantry, where the first 16 farmers began to walk to Dublin 50 years ago. Tommy Moyles was there for the Irish Farmers Journal, and he heard Shane O'Brien read from the diary of the march written by his grandfather, Sean O'Brien, followed by Rory Deasy, son of the NFA's president at the time, Rickard Deasy.
7th of October 1966. Left Bantry at 10:15. Arrived Glandart at 11:40. A huge crowd at Bantry. Total of 28 at Glandart. 2 men volunteered here. Sean McSweeney, Christy Cronin. Reached Castletonovan at 13:20. School children out to meet us. Garda O'Connor, Dromaleague at Crossroads. Left Castletonovan at 14:15. Arrived at the Manway at 4:30. Meal at West End. Very well treated. Left the Manway at 5:30, accompanied by about 100. Arrived Manch Strait, 19:30. Arrived at Inniskeen, 20:30. 500 people, huge ovation.
It's a very poignant day, as I remember back 50 years ago. I was 14 at the time. I remember meeting them on the steps and that. And I look back now 50 years and I realise why and how the farmers got so much support from the urban population in Dublin, because it was only 53 years prior to that again before Larkin was locked out on the streets of Dublin. Complete lockout. And it resonated with the people of Dublin. And they came, Dad told me they used to come with 10 shillings. They'd come with a little half naggin of whiskey at night, because November was a very cold time. They'd come with cakes, anything at all. And these were people, ordinary working class people of Dublin, who came out in support and were abhorred by the treatment that was meted out by the farmers, that they wouldn't even have the courtesy, after walking the 217 miles, of having a meeting with them. You know, I think it's a disgraceful behaviour, and it worked well. On another front, you know, it's great to see the true spirit of volunteerism being celebrated here and being exemplified by the 5 people who survived to today, and we saw them on the podium. You know, that they gave of their time, of completely free of charge. They gave so generously to others, and they created an organisation which is the real NFA, or the real IFA, if you like, if you pardon the pun, and which is doing voluntary work on behalf of other farmers, for other farmers, and on the way enjoying it and getting satisfaction from it. I mean, that's what I would have got from today, and it's great to see such a crowd who came out here today. You know, it is part of history. 1966 and that march is a historical event that goes down in the annals, and I think we should all be proud and very thankful and grateful to the people who gave of their time. And as I said to Joe Healy there, you know, it's like an iceberg. The people who walked to Dublin, the 30,000 who walked and marched and congregated in Dublin, that was only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more underneath who were helping, because I know that there were a lot of farmers whose work was carried on by fellow farmers.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Tourroir, the home of Irish dairy.
Now, what if the health problems we see in our herds over the winter were down to the design of our sheds? That's the opinion of Jamie Robertson from Aberdeen University. He told the Irish Farmers Journal's beef editor Aidan Woods why most Irish cattle sheds fail to provide adequate ventilation.
I think on the environment side and health, you get it right. We're looking at a 20% increase in daily live weight gain if you're struggling at the moment. You've got to get on top of the health. So the most important things, I think the new message, some of you heard me before, the new message is let's get the hygiene right. It's very simple, but I think a lot of people are not doing it correctly. Speak to the vet, wring their fingers or whatever. But after that, then what we need is a steady delivery of fresh air. And if you're talking about very young stock, then anything below 15 degrees centigrade, then that animal is under pressure, and we need to ameliorate that. Don't make the calf house warm. What you can do, make sure you really slash the feed into them. We're looking for 900 grams a day solid at least. But you can put a calf jacket on them, you can put a heat lamp on them, but they must be on a dry bed.
Okay, I suppose we're coming into a time of the year where animals are being housed at the moment on farms. In terms of, I suppose, three things that farmers can do as they house animals, be it weanlings or be it finishing cattle, what three things can they do to ensure healthy cattle in sheds this winter?
Well, as I said, primary hygiene. I think we're really missing a trick. So, feeders, drinkers, it doesn't take a lot of time. I think we need to up the ante on that. That maybe means before animals go inside, we've got to steam clean. There's a thing called biofilm kicks around, and once the mycoplasma or something, there's some of the other Cryptosporidium, gets in there. You can't get it out. So I think hygiene is really what I'm pushing hard. But just what I said before, The points are you must have buildings that can deliver fresh air. It's called ventilation, but I just call it fresh air. And certainly over in Ireland, there's too many buildings covered in green tin. We need to sort it out. What you need in Ireland, for goodness sake, is Yorkshire board. Not space board, but Yorkshire board. So, I think that, and dryness. I have to say again, I don't underestimate the difficulty. We live in a warm, or temperate, wet climate. It's actually physiologically very, very hard climate on animals. It would be better off if it was sub-zero, because then it would be dry.
Okay.
Everything's adding moisture to your systems. The broken gutters and dam pipes, a whole load of sharn lying immediately outside, floors that don't drain properly. Get them sorted.
In terms of, I suppose, pneumonia problems, has vaccination a role to play, do you think, in terms of, in the face of an outbreak or in terms of problems in sheds? Do you think vaccination has a role to play?
It's how I became involved really in the whole sort of design and animal health bit, is because I see a lot of vaccines being used under conditions where it's unlikely they're going to work. They absolutely have a role. But it's part of the deal. It starts with good colostrum, the whole immune function bit. But vaccines, I think in Ireland there's without doubt a lot of room for use of vaccines, and people shouldn't consider it a cost. They should consider it an investment. And I mean, if it's going to cost 10, 12 euros, to get a double shot of whatever in, you'll get that money back very fast, but you need to vaccinate a group.
Jamie Robertson, Animal Systems Specialist from Aberdeen, thanks very much.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Tourroir, the home of Irish dairy.
Finally, let's join Irish Country Living editor Mairead Lavery at the Tourroir event organised in Croke Park on Tuesday. There, she met Margaret Jeffers, the founder of Good Food Ireland, who told her that Ireland cannot afford to be complacent when it comes to food tourism.
We're celebrating the 10th anniversary of Good Food Ireland. Are you where you wanted to be at this stage in terms of the work of Good Food Ireland, Margaret?
You know, Mairead, I never feel that we're where we want to be. We're on the journey, and we've been on that journey for 10 years. And yes, have things changed? Absolutely. No question about it. It was an inspirational start, the people behind me. But we need to now, I think, move a little faster. We're in a stage that globally food tourism is moving extremely fast. And I have a concern that we're going to be left behind if we continue to talk about it. And talk is good, but we must have action. And we need now, I feel, to make a statement, in the next few years about where we want to go as a country. And I just hope that in some way the efforts in Good Food Ireland will be able to influence that.
Okay. At today's event, Tourroir, it's a new concept for you. The whole theme of collaboration came up over and over again. The sectors must collaborate, the agencies must collaborate, the producers must collaborate. Is that really what we're talking about here?
Well, collaboration, there is collaboration in the country, and Good Food Ireland is testament to it, as many other groups that have been set up within regions, within towns and villages. So there is collaboration. What needs to be there is a very, very clear strategic direction that has a sustainable distribution and a future, as far as I'm concerned. And, we've got to bring that onto an international stage. So as much as we develop it at local level and parish level, and yes, it has to be done, it has to be a grassroots movement, we must create a framework around that can bring that internationally. And that is very much the thinking behind what we do, all of us in Good Food Ireland. It's to give that international positioning for the country and the people behind it. So it's the distribution. When we stand up, I always say, Ireland is such a small destination in a global context, and we're competing in a global market. So we must come together, but we must have strong strategic direction. And as an industry group, I hope that we somehow provide thought process and conversation around that leadership.
Well, and that's where the leadership is coming from, really. It is organisations like Good Food Ireland that's bringing that leadership in food tourism to the country.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, as Kay Hart said there in Farmgate this morning, she had never even heard of the word food tourism 10 years ago. Yes. And that's something from, that being said by a lady that has been doing what she's been doing for 25 and 30 years. And we just put a name on it. And that's what we wanted to do, is put a name on it and bring them together. And as I said in the closing speech, it's to be proud of what we have and own what we have and stop looking at what we don't have. There's countries that would die for what we have and envy what we have.
Again, it was John Concannon who brought out the message that we have a wonderful story to tell. If we get it right, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, we've just got to believe. We're our own worst enemies. We've just got to believe ourselves that we have that culture, we have that strength, and put a framework together to bring it together and just make it happen.
Listen, Margaret, continued success and happy 10th anniversary.
Thank you so much.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Untitled, the home of Irish dairy.